I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. All right, y'all, we asked and you answered. Here is a compilation of some of your most common questions, from best pre-workout fueling to the keto diet or intermittent fasting, also what's to do with egg yolks, to how to manage cravings, and my top recs for better for you potato chips. This is just a sampling of some of the questions that I had from y'all that I will be answering in this week's podcast episode. And I am joined by a very special guest, my husband, Brad. He's actually asking all of these questions on your behalf. So welcome, Brad.
Thank you. This is one of those things that may or may not be a benefit of working from home, that you get pulled into a podcast to read stuff. So just as a heads up.
He said, you should have somebody with you to actually read the questions. And I was like,
that's a great idea.
How about you?
Yeah.
So it's the first introduction. We've talked a lot about you on the podcast. So now you're here. A huge thank you to everybody who sent in your questions. This is something that I'll be doing periodically, depending on the volume of questions that we get. To send in your questions for future podcasts, you can message me on social at Molly Kimball RD on Instagram or Facebook. You can also email me at molly@mollykimball.com. And I'll include the links of all of these in the show notes for this episode. You can also just stop me in the grocery or on the street, which, as you'll hear, some of these questions that we're talking about came that way as well. I'm so grateful that you are sending these questions my way. It can be all too easy to turn to Dr. Google for our questions, which may or may not be a good thing. And a few tips for those of you who are consulting Google. I cannot stress enough how important it is to always consider the source before you click for more information. So seeking out well-known, well-respected sources, especially those with national reputations. Medical center websites like our Ochsner Health blog here, based out of New Orleans, tons of fantastic information there. Organizations like Tufts, Johns Hopkins, and Mayo Clinic. The National Institute of Health is an excellent source. So I'll include the links of these as well. But again, I'm here. Ask me the questions through social, email me, just stop me and ask. And with that, let's get started.
All right. It looks like our first, it's a list of questions from Emily Chatelaine.
Yeah, Emily's actually been on this podcast before. She's a brilliant woman. She actually does a lot with school nutrition. And if you're interested in kids and nutrition, she's your expert in school food nutrition. We had a full podcast with Emily.
Well, she had several questions for you on this. So first question of 4, what is your go-to me day? Do you do a spa? ?
Okay, so this one, I guess, is more about Molly, not nutrition or wellness overall, but I do think it's, I'm always interested in, if there's someone who's a wellness professional, what do they do for that self-care? So if I'm looking at a day that is a me day specifically, I can't remember the last time that I did just carve out an entire day to say, oh, I'm going to be like pampered or do a spa or something like that. I'm not really so much a spa person. For me, a true real me day would be a place, or a time when I have zero schedule. I don't have to be at a certain place at a certain time. It's just completely open, especially if we're traveling. I would consider that part of that me day, being in a new place, exploring it, talking with people there, learning from them, trying new things, hearing what their favorite places are around there and going and checking those out. So really just being completely unscheduled, I would say is like the ultimate me day. But in the real world, normally I would say, let's just say like a weekend that's a pretty light weekend, or I would say kind of at home, a me day, up a little bit later. Typically during the week, I'm up really early. And so sleeping in just a little bit more on the weekend, having like a good cup of coffee. We really like our coffee. We use the Italian, on the weekends, we'll do the Italian coffee. It's a little contraption that's like the stovetop. It's called Mocha, Moka. And you put the espresso in the bottom, and it kind of filters, it boils and makes sure it's basically stovetop coffee, and it is so delicious. It's like true Italian coffee, but it takes longer. So during the week, a lot of times we do Nespresso for that cup of coffee. On the weekends, just really taking a little bit more time doing the Nespresso, hanging with Brad for that. Have that good coffee, making sure, there's always some type of movement incorporated into our day. Whether it's just going for a walk, it's going out, going to the park. Lately I've been loving kayaking here. If in normal times, going to art markets. I love working out in the yard. So, working out in the garden, doing the stuff with flowers there. And then having people over. I love, going out to dinner with friends is great, but I especially really love having friends over here so that we're kind of just chilling. We're in our space here. But what I would say about the me day thing is that always I do try to work self-care into every day. And that's, some of the daily things I would do that are kind of like me moments, not me day. A walk and talk with friends or walk and talk with Brad at the end of the day. And the walk and talk can be virtual. We each have our earbuds in and we're walking, we're catching up on things. And it makes the time go by, but it's also that great kind of merging to really great activities. I mentioned physical activity. I'll do, workouts most days, but a lot of my workout includes small little physical therapy moves that are key for I have, chronic hip issues from years of overuse and running and not listening to my body. So I do include those PT moves daily as part of that self-care. I've actually also started acupuncture. I'm only about a month in. I'm doing it weekly and it's here in New Orleans. I really like the benefit that I feel from it, from a bunch of different reasons. And I'm actually probably going to do a whole podcast on acupuncture. And then also I'd say pottery. That's something that each week I head to the pottery studio, and that's kind of that me time where what I'm doing, what I'm working on, I see the results of it immediately versus something that we have to wait. And, we're working with a team on something and it's a long-term project. Pottery, you see the results right then. So I know that that's kind of a long way of answering the question of a me day, but I hope that kind of helps to give an idea. And I guess just overall, what I look at as a me day or me time is really more on the practical, purposeful side of things, less of the spa or pampering indulgence side.
All right. Emily's second question is, what do you crave? Sugary sweets, savory like pizza? What else? This is interesting to see how honest you're going to be on this.
So I do crave sweets a lot less than I did when I was younger. I mean, maybe just something small at night. It could be, we do the low sugar peanut butter cups. We use almond butter. So the low sugar almond butter cups from our Eat Fit cookbook, they are the bomb. They are low sugar, low carb, all that stuff, but they're super clean ingredients, coconut oil, almond butter, cocoa, cacao, sweetened with Swerve, and they're delicious. So something like that at night. But I would say mostly what I really love, I love good bread. I love salty crunchy. I love cheese. So bread dipped into a spicy chili infused olive oil. Fresh grated Parmesan. I keep just like the huge block of it and grate it always on anything. Homemade pasta. Brad makes an incredible homemade pasta. So I love that. And the olive oil Parmesan sauce, it's this cheesy creaminess on this homemade pasta with some spinach, mushrooms. We'll use local Gulf shrimp. Actually, last weekend, that was a really awesome one with the Costco lobster. Costco has lobster, by the way, but that was like a real splurge, and truffle oil. So it was lobster truffle oil with homemade pasta. It was incredible. But you can also do truffle oil blend where it's truffle oil and olive oil, and it's not quite so pricey, and you don't need that much. So that was definitely like a splurge version of it, just a fancier version of it. But something like that, I love that and look forward to it. So definitely more savory than sweet. Also just creamy. I do love like sauces and that kind of stuff. There's a dip called bitchin' sauce, and I've only seen it at Whole Foods so far. It's in the refrigerated section, but it is raw and vegan. It's actually almond based, but it's creamy. You would not guess at all that it's raw, vegan, or even almonds, but they have different, Chipotle version and stuff like that. So I'll do that bitchin' sauce with anything. Greek yogurt based dips, like Trader Joe's has a spinach kale Greek yogurt dip. And then if it's vegetables that I have, it could just be anything. I'll even like you use that as a sauce over some sort of lean protein. And then still on the cravings part is chips. I do love, like, that is something that more that sweet versus salty for chips. I would say something that I do, I just really like them. They're not nutritious specifically, but like the thick, crunchy kettle style sea salt chips. I do love that kind of stuff. So I would say, what's my craving? It's definitely that. Definitely more of my go-to than sugary sweets, donuts, pastries, chocolate kind of stuff.
I didn't hear Halo Top get mentioned.
I do like Halo Top. I have, but that's one where when it first came out, it was hard to keep it at just a pint. And now I feel like, at just a pint, the pint's supposed to have 4 servings. And I felt like that seems impossible. Now it seems very doable, kind of go into that thing of, just a little bit does the trick.
And it's pretty healthy.
Yeah. Oh, snack. Yeah. Halo Top, if you haven't tried it, I love it as a, it's got a little bit more protein, a lot less sugar, and it's an ice cream. It's in pints. Red velvet is my favorite.
So third question from Emily, what's a good trick for remembering to drink water throughout the day?
Well, the first thing is to remember that it doesn't have to just be water. So all types of fluid hydrate us. So if you're not a big water drinker, we don't have to force ourselves for that. We can add flavor to something. We can do sparkling water, sparkling flavored waters, herbal tea hydrates us just like water does. But I think that the biggest trick I would say for remembering to drink it is have something that you're drinking out of that you know how many ounces it is. And you have a goal of how many of those you want to drink a day. So if you've got, say, a liter bottle or something like that, you may have the goal of drinking 3 of those a day. But a good rule of thumb is to take your body weight and divide it by 2, and that's about how many ounces of fluid you need. So if you're drinking out of little small 8-ounce bottles, get a bigger bottle, because then you're going to feel like you got to drink 12 of those. But tracking how many of whatever the vessel is that you're sipping from.
All right. Fourth question from Emily. What do you find most challenging about wellness? What's really hard for you to stay healthy with?
I find that the physical activity, the movement part is not hard for me. I find it so emotionally satisfying. It's very much a stress release. It's kind of that unwinding for me. So getting that exercise in isn't the challenge. Eating nutritiously isn't the challenge. And those things I mentioned earlier that I love, good bread or pizza or homemade pasta, to me, that all fits into the realm of eating nutritiously. I don't categorize that as something that isn't. I kind of look at that 80-20 rule. So I feel like nutritionally, it's not hard for me to stay on track, usually with nutrition or exercise. I would say the third element that I struggle the most with is sleep. And we've talked a lot on this podcast before that nutrition, diet, and exercise are key, but we often forget about that third pillar. And for me, I'm looking at Brad as I'm saying, that's my hardest. It's something that I'll make a goal and try to do it, but then inevitably end up staying up later, waking up early to do things. And so that seems to always get edged out.
Okay. Next question is from Rayanne Tanner. It's from Instagram, and Rayanne said, how much does the quality of the calories really matter?
I would say the quality of the calories does really matter a lot. You'll hear people say a lot of times, well, a calorie is a calorie. It doesn't really matter what you eat. You can still lose weight as long as you cut calories. Yes, while that might be true, you could also feel really rotten. So in theory, if someone could lose weight on X number of calories, but they ate that all of jelly beans, or gummy bears or just slabs of butter, they're going to feel horrible. And so the quality of the calories really matters when we're talking about our mood, when we're talking about our levels of how we're, not feeling like we're on that energy roller coaster, our levels of appetite, our hunger. So we can feel really satisfied and still be eating to meet our goals when we're choosing really high quality calories. So those plant-based fats, calories from vegetables, from fruits, from whole grains. So the quality of the calories really matters when it impacts our energy, that sustained energy, our cravings, our hunger. I think when a lot of times someone thinks they're addicted to certain foods, I'm addicted to sugar, someone might say, that's often because of what we're eating. We're triggering it. We're putting ourselves onto that roller coaster with those choices. So I do think the quality of the calories really matters. As I said just a bit ago, though, I'm a big fan of, it's often referred to as the 80-20 rule, that 80% of the time you're kind of you're on your game. You've got everything planned out. You know that what you're doing is really good quality calories. And that 20% is that splurge that's really worth it to you. And as long as you're factoring that in and it's not the majority, I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Next question is from email. This one looks like it's from Cynthia. What's your recommendation for a healthier potato chip? It's my main splurge in an otherwise overall healthy diet.
Which was perfect following our 80-20 conversation we just had. So as I said, the kettle style chips, and y'all, if you've ever had the Costco sea salt, I think it's the pink Himalayan sea salt, we get those. The bag is as big as your torso. And so it's a little embarrassing that, if you're eating it, you definitely I'll pull it out and put some in a separate container to bring if we're going to go sit out on the porch, because we have sat on the front porch with the Costco bag freshly open. And I was like, somebody walked by, I kind of pushed it behind Brad. He's like, are you really pushing the bag behind me? I'm like, yes, because this is a giant bag. Yes, it lasts for quite some time. It lasts a while. We're not knocking back the whole bag there, but it is one of those that definitely can also fool you of how much you're eating. So that is one of my favorite, just like crave worthy, good, crunchy, salty potato chips. Is it nutritious? It's still just white potatoes. It's just a chip. I just like it for the taste. When I look at nutritional content of a chip and I look at what's something that's really given me a lot of nutritional bang for that, it's not the kettle style sea salt chips. It's something more like a black bean chip. Beanfields has a really good line. Also Beanitos. It just would go with there. Which one do you like best, or which does your store carry? But Beanitos are getting more and more common in mainstream grocery stores. I've seen Beanfields as well. I do like veggie chips a lot. So if you haven't seen these, Rhythm Foods, those are, again, sometimes at Costco, they're sometimes at regular grocery stores, but Rhythm Foods has kale chips, cauliflower chips, beet chips, carrot chips, and they're basically dried and they're like dehydrated, but they're super crunchy like a chip, and they'll have different flavors of them. And it's truly just vegetables that you're crunching on like a chip.
But on the veggie chips, I mean, I know that when we look at those ones that are kind of labeled veggie chips and you say they're really not, I mean, how do you distinguish between those two?
Thank you. Good point. So if you're thinking you're doing veggie chips, those that I mentioned, that brand Rhythm Foods is one of the most common brands that has like a really good product. Others, when you see it called veggie chip, or veggie straws or the Pirate's Booty veggie chip type things, they're mostly corn flour or potato flour, rice flour, and then they'll have a little bit of beet powder or spinach powder for color, and it makes you feel like you're eating something better. But it's really no better nutritionally than those kettle style chips we were talking about a minute ago. So nutritionally, we can really easily get fooled by something called a veggie chip. So yeah, definitely turn over your ingredients, look and see what's actually in it. The cheese crisp, if you haven't had them, there's all different brands now. There's so many brands of cheese crisp. I like the Wisp because it's like wisps, and it's basically just cheese made into like a little crunchy crisp. I like that brand specifically because they make them in little single serve packets. And so it definitely helps with portion control in there. And then one that I'm really crazy about is a protein chip. They have like protein puffs and stuff. Is a brand called I-1. It's IWON, and they have all different flavors of it, but they're these little protein-rich chips or protein puffs, all different types. And so the black bean chips, veggie chips, cheese crisp, protein crisp, that's what I'll have kind of as that afternoon snack when I really want something that's going to sustain me and hold me over. Those kettle chips I talked about, that's kind of just like that treat. That's splurge.
The I-1 chips, that's the ones that I see come in the mail.
Yes.
Okay, so do they offer those at stores, or you have to buy them online?
Good question. So the I-1 I do get them online in like bulk through Amazon, but you can find them locally at stores like a Vitamin Shop. I don't think I've seen them at GNC's, but Vitamin Shop has them in local stores.
Okay. Next question is from Kevin. And he said, I want to ask about trying to brew a hard cider or hard seltzer or a beer that's a very low carbs and low calories, but really don't know too much about the fake sugar stuff to put in there?
So this was a really good question that I wasn't sure of the answer. So I asked around to the low carb sweetener experts, our friends over at Swerve, and none of them have actually tried it. I would say yet, because when I asked the question, they said, man, we've been thinking that too, and we're actually going to look into doing it and trying it. So we may have an update on this question, but here's the hypothesis. Here's what we all kind of agree is needed. Is I've had this question before. People want to brew, but they don't want to put all the sugar in there. The answer is that you do need to have some sugar to feed the bacteria for the proper fermentation. So you could start with maybe about 20% of the sugar that it calls for. So cutting it, but still cutting it maybe by about 80% less, but still keeping about 20% that your recipe batch calls for. And then see if that's enough to get that fermentation process done. And then once that fermentation is done and complete, you could then add a sweetener to taste, like something like Swerve, or you could add other flavors there if you wanted to. You could add, I'm a huge fan of ginger, and we were just doing something about that earlier today. So I even think you could put a little bit of ginger in there, other things that you could flavor once that fermentation is done. If you think about the things that go into like kombucha, we've done a podcast with the Big Easy Bucha founder, Austin Sherman, and they'll take all different types of flavors, basically all the flavors that you see on their label, they're infusing those into the kombucha. So even if it was, you're not going to put cucumber in this, but any kind of flavor that you like, you could infuse into this or add something like the sweetener like Swerve once you've fermented it. And if any of y'all are listening and you have tried this, tell me how it's gone. If you've tried doing a lower sugar brew, and if you do try it after this, let me know how it goes.
Okay. Next question is from Barbara Blank. It was on Facebook. And her first question is, what's your opinion on the keto diet? Something that I know that you get daily. And we have done full podcasts on that as well. So you can scroll back through the library of this fueled podcast. I would say my first part of that answer is most people who think they're doing the keto diet are really just doing a low carb diet. And the true keto diet is not only low in carbs, it's also lower in protein. And so when someone is doing a diet and they've cut out all their starches, but they're having, salmon and steak and all these things kind of throughout the day, they're probably not, protein is converted into glucose after we eat it. It's converted into glucose. And so it does, a high protein diet can prevent us from going into ketosis. So that's why I say that, it's still a lower protein diet. Traditional keto diet is really low protein, really low carb, almost just pure fats. So most of us, if we say we're doing the keto diet, we think we're doing the keto diet, we're doing a modified version of it. So if most of us are doing a modified version of it that's a low carb diet, what do I think of that? I don't mind it at all. I think that a lot of us really overdo it when it comes to carbs. They're easy, they're everywhere, they're cheap, they're readily available. It's what's handed out to us at restaurants when we sit down. It's what's in the office kitchen or the vending machine. It's the stuff that's just all around us. And so I think that we tend to overdo it on carbs that are low quality carbs. And so doing something like a keto diet, or especially a modified version of it, can get people more mindful of where these carbs that aren't so good, nutritious, might be sneaking into our diets. The other thing I would say is if you are doing a keto diet and you say, no, like I'm really doing like a full-on keto diet, I would encourage you to do more of a plant-based keto. And so, yeah, if you want to still keep some of the animal fats in there, yes, but at least look to see what are the opportunities to swap out some of those for plant-based fats, whether it's nuts or plant oils, nut butters, avocado, et cetera, so that, we're not getting just so much animal fats in there. We were somewhere the other day and you saw it was something about keto. I think it was like a protein powder. And it said like keto protein powder. And you're like, well, that doesn't make sense because it's it can't be keto and high protein.
It was just pure protein. Exactly. They're just marketing to the keto audience. Yeah. But if it was true, if it was truly keto, it would be more fat than anything else. And this had just pure protein and really not much fat to speak of.
And so keto is low protein, high fat?
Mm-hmm. Lower protein, still some protein, but much lower protein than what I would usually typically recommend, and also what the average person would usually consume. So usually it is going to involve really drastically reducing your carbs, but for a lot of people, still significantly reducing your protein, and then in turn bumping up your fat.
Okay. Next question actually came through me, which happens a good amount, where I will be somewhere and someone says, "Hey, could you ask Molly a question for me?" Well, this one came from Margaret, and it was, "Can you ask Molly a question for my mom?" And the question was actually two questions. What is your opinion of juicing? And what are your opinion of cleanses? And so why don't you let's talk about cleanses first. So what's your opinion on cleanses?
So, one of our Eat Fit team members, Maria Terry, actually had a really great post on her Insta story about this, about kind of detoxes and cleanses. And, she was addressing people who say, do they work? And she was like, well, one of the things to first identify is, what do you mean by work? Because what do you even expect it to do? Like, what are you doing the cleanse for or the detox for? So I thought that was a really good way to look at it. The other thing that she said, and she's done it, I do it, we all say, your body naturally detoxifies on its own. If your liver is healthy, your kidney's healthy, it naturally detoxifies. She pointed out, and I thought that this is a really great point, that's not what people are looking for. So when you're saying, how does it work? People are not looking to naturally cleanse or detoxify as it normally happens in our body. Usually someone is looking to do a cleanse because they feel really rotten. They may be overeating, over drinking. They've really just blown it out on vacation. They come back and they feel horrible. And so they say, I'm going to do a 3-day cleanse or a 10-day cleanse or something like that. The other time that I'll see people do it is when, some sort of a detox or a cleanse will be when they just simply feel out of control with eating, from an emotional perspective, a psychological perspective, they feel like they're underneath it and they just can't get a grip on it. And so doing something like a cleanse, they'll feel like can help them be more mindful about it. And in both of those situations, I would say if that's what you're turning to that detox or that cleanse for, is to help reboot your mindset, or to help you kind of feel better fast after what might have been a blowout eating and drinking, then if you've done well, it can help. So I would caution, as you're doing any kind of a juice cleanse or detox, look for those that are primarily vegetable focused. A lot of them are heavy on the fruit juices, and so they're really heavy on sugars. I also like them. There's some that kind of gradually phase you in. It might be still including, some vegetables or fruits or, certain foods that still might be included in the days leading up to it. Maybe there's only one day of just the liquid only type juice cleanse. And then you kind of phase back in with quote clean eating. So there's so many different ways to do it. So I would say making sure you're not going with something that's so extreme, making sure you're going with something that's still going to give you calories and nourishing calories while you're doing it. So that's cleanses or detox.
And on cleanses, are people doing just water cleanses? Are they doing, what's the long term? Like, should they be doing more than 3 days or 5 days or 7 days? What's the outer limit on these things?
Usually people do water cleanses, and there are extreme and lengthy water cleanses that are not recommended by the vast majority of health professionals, myself included. So if someone is going to do a water fast, even for an entire day, I'm not an advocate of that.
So they should get some type of caloric intake.
Yeah. I don't see the need. Now from, there may be certain religious reasons that someone chooses to do water, a water only fast. Some of them are really, that I've read about, are like really extended. And you can't even imagine this person is like still, they may be living, but how much are they really thriving? So I do still want to have that cleanse or fast still have some sort of calorie. So again, a vegetable juice blend that you're having through the day. There may be other things that you could add into it again, and again, maybe doing a modified version of a juice cleanse where you're putting something like something that would give you protein. The first thing that comes to mind that I've had people do is even add something like a collagen powder to the vegetable juice, shake it up, or stir it up, blend it up. And that could be a way to include that. One of the risks of doing water only is that there's zero electrolytes to speak of in water. And so you can easily create that electrolyte imbalance, especially if you're doing any type of normal activity or, you're outside the heat. And that can be dangerous if you're doing multiple days of water only. Whereas even if you were just doing vegetable juices, they still have a decent bit of sodium, even with just fresh pressed vegetables.
And then how many days are we talking about? It's a 1 day vegetable juice cleanse, 3, 5, 7.
I would say depending on the quality or like what else it includes or how restrictive it is. I would say if someone did a 1 day, that doesn't, and this, of course, everything that we're saying is under the umbrella of if someone has diabetes, if you have other things going on, this is not who we're speaking to for this. You would definitely need to talk to your physician, your diabetes educator before doing anything like that. So everything that I'm saying, we're making the assumption that we don't have issues that would prevent us from doing something, medical issues. 1 day is okay. It can be somewhat of a reboot. I think most people would do a 3 day. I'm not opposed to a 5 day if we're also getting other nutrients in, not just juices.
Okay. And then the second part of that question, what is your opinion on juicing?
I love juicing. I think juicing is a really easy way to get a lot of vegetables into a little space. And you can share what we do each day.
We have a very earthy juice that is delivered from Green Fork once a week to us, and it's for every day of the week. And we put it in the freezer and the fridge. And I sent actually a picture of it to Margaret, who asked me about this question for her mom, and she said it looked like it was scooped from a pond, which is not a bad description of what the juice looks like. It's what is it? Beet and what else is in it?
Yeah. So sorry, Green Fork, for that. But Stephanie of the Green Fork is probably like, yeah, it's true. So as Red said, every Monday, the Green Fork delivers 7 bottles of juice. They're 16-ounce jars, reusable jars. And the reason we do some in the freezer, some in the fridge is it's only about a 72-hour shelf life, even in the fridge, because it's not pasteurized. So we'll take 4, put them in the freezer, 3, put them in the fridge, and then kind of pull them out from the freezer through the week. We do the delivery once a week because it's convenient. Yet if we did a delivery every day, that would be you'd be paying for that. So to kind of help save, we have them deliver all at once. And then they're reusable bottles. So each Monday we leave the glass jars out from the previous week. They do a reimbursement for that. Then they'll, of course, reuse those. It's a blend. So the Green Fork has different juice blends, a lot of green juice blends. And one of the most popular they have is Love and also, I believe, Patience. And those are all greens. And so it's spinach, it's kale, it's spirulina, it's cilantro, parsley, all of these things. So about in 2012, I asked them, hey, could we try this, but then also add beet to it because we're not getting the nutrients of the reds of the beets in here. And then let's also add, ginger and turmeric and put all the goodness in there that we can, hence the earthiness that Brad describes. And because it's a lot. It's the equivalent of about 5 pounds of produce that's juiced into there. And we split it. So we have about 8 ounces each a day. We could probably do more, but it's pretty significant. And then that kind of makes it, from a price perspective, from everything, it kind of just makes it doable for us. So the juicing of it, and someone said, well, why don't you eat vegetables instead? Well, we do eat vegetables. We eat vegetables every day. This is just, 5 pounds juiced. If you're looking at a juicer, it's basically all the nutrients, the liquids extracted from these vegetables that we're talking about. The fiber doesn't come out. The fiber goes out a different way. And so the fiber is not retained in these juices. So are we getting fiber in these juices? Absolutely not. But we're getting a ton of phytochemicals, of antioxidants, a ton of nutrients there. So we get plenty of fiber from other sources. This is just a way to cram in a lot of nutrients into that 8-ounce sip that each of us are having. One thing though to caution is as you are in the juice bars, make sure, or looking or juicing your own or at the grocery store and turning the bottles over, make sure that it's primarily vegetables. And if you do have fruits, that's at the bottom of that list. You want to have it be primarily a veggie based.
And I remember I had asked that question because some of the fruit juices taste so good, but it's actually a lot more expensive, right? Just to make it with vegetables. Because when you think of the water or the juice, not the water, but the juice that's going to come out of an apple, and then you compare that to the juice that may come out of, ginger or cilantro or something like that.
That's a great point. So if you're looking at comparing products and you say, well, this one is like $2 less. Well, yeah, but it's all like, apple and pineapple, which is, for the volume of juice they're getting from it, to Brad's point, it's giving a lot of liquid from that. And so you're not getting nearly the volume of produce going into that, and certainly not the amount of vegetables and nutrients. Now, the exception to that is someone who actually needs those calories. So if there is someone who is struggling to get more calories into their diet, then yeah, these fruit juices or fruit and vegetable juice blends can be a fantastic option.
Okay. Next question is from Howard, who lives down the street from us. And Howard, this is a question you also get a lot. What is the deal with egg yolks?
So as Brad and I are like, either we're just walking down the street, we have, sometimes people roll down the windows and they'll have questions, or they stand in their front yard and they'll shout out stuff. So it's always interesting. Our friend Amy came and spent a couple of weekends with us, and it was every time we would be out, she was laughing at whatever someone's commentary is. So Howard's question about egg yolks, this is a common one. It's one that seems like science kind of reversed itself, and it did, as we had more and more research showing us that there's not a reason that we had to do egg beaters or egg whites only or throw away those yolks. And so when we look at cholesterol in eggs, or cholesterol in any food for that matter, the cholesterol that's in food does not have an impact on our on our blood levels of cholesterol. So eating cholesterol doesn't raise our cholesterol levels. So for most people, the short answer is an egg a day is fine for most people. The yolks are really rich in several nutrients that are hard to get in other places. One in particular is choline. It is one of the top food sources of choline, which is key for metabolism, for metabolic health. Egg yolks are also really rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, and these are two nutrients that support eye health and brain health. So there's really good nutritional benefit to these yolks, and so we absolutely don't have to throw them away. If you're trying to, if you feel like, well, I'm already doing eggs and cheese or something else, well, then maybe do an egg and an extra white or two just to boost your protein. But I can't think of anyone that I would say specifically, I need you to limit your egg yolks.
Okay. What other, when you're saying cholesterol doesn't impact our cholesterol, eating cholesterol, what other items would that qualify for?
Shellfish. So like shrimp or lobster.
Or high in cholesterol?
Mm-hmm. Those are high cholesterol, and people will sometimes, even if it's boiled or steamed and doesn't have a lot of sodium added, people feel bad about it, and they feel like they need to be apologetic, or, oh, I shouldn't be having this but because of my cholesterol, but it's not. They're actually really low in saturated fat. There's almost, an insignificant amount of saturated fat in those, and the cholesterol that's in them doesn't matter.
Okay. Next question is from Rochelle by email. Is it possible to eat too much fruit?
So sort of going back to like we were saying with the juices, if someone needs more calories, if their goal is to gain weight or they're struggling to get calories in, fruit can be a really great source of it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. For most people, I would say you're not at risk of eating too much fruit. Most people are at risk of not eating enough produce, period, whether it's vegetables, fruits, any of that. I do have a few people who have had very kind of like obsessive personalities, kind of compulsive. And, they would eat, if they got a basket of peaches, they would eat all 8 peaches standing over the sink. Well, yes, in that case, the sugar can add up. But if you're having, a piece of fruit, several times a day and you're having it maybe with your breakfast, with your snack, maybe as part of a nighttime snack, you're fine. You're not going to eat too much fruit. I especially like to make sure you have a source of protein with it, especially if it's going to be part of, say, a snack that you're looking to bridge and hold you for some time. Then maybe pair it with cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, or depending on what the fruit is, you could have it with just even a handful of nuts, or you could have almond butter, something like that with it. But pairing that protein and or fats with the fruit can help you stay fuller longer than just fruit alone. But most of us, we're not going to eat too much fruit.
Okay. Next question is from Haley Jeannie Royer, and it's from Instagram, Batwoman, apparently. What's the best pre and post workout meal and snacks?
And I think we're going to combine that one with
what are your thoughts on nutrition while training for a 10K or longer?
So with this, the pre-workout, post-workout, and then, training for a 10K or longer, the answer on all of this is we really could do a full podcast on just that. And actually we have done it on that. So again, scroll through the library and you can listen to that. But the reason it's, a little bit more complex than it seems just at first glance is there's so many factors that play a role. So the intensity of your workouts, the duration of your workouts, what else you've eaten or typically eat throughout the day, your GI system, how comfortable are you eating before your workout? How do you feel after your workout to eat for recovery? So there's just a lot of things that vary so much individually. I would also say at this point, this is a great time to do a big plug for our registered dietitian. So if you are looking to see, I'm training for this event, my energy doesn't feel as great as it could be, or I'm cramping up, or I'm doing something wrong, I'm just not feeling great either before, during, or after this training, meet with a registered dietitian. We have incredible registered dietitians at Ochsner Fitness Center, Lauren and Alexis. If you're not in the New Orleans area, and if you are in the New Orleans area, you can email them nutrition@ochsner.org. If you're not in the New Orleans area, you can, there's the eatright.org is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics website, and you can find a dietitian in your area. But I would say this is one of those that is so personalized. So I would say the things to factor in when you are looking at, okay, my pre-workout, post-workout, or training for something like a 10K or longer. The first thing is, when are you eating? So make sure you're leaving time for proper digestion for that pre-workout meal. So if it's been a full meal, most people, or I would say many people, might want to wait at least 2 hours before exercising. So if you've had what you would consider a full meal, 30 minutes isn't going to be long enough. You're likely to cramp up. You might just feel still kind of queasy. We've had people throw up if they've, exercising too soon after they ate. So after a full meal, I would say 2 hours before you work out. For a small snack, an hour or even as little as 30 minutes can be sufficient. But if you feel like you definitely want to eat closer to the time that you're going to be working out or training, a small snack or even something that's liquid, like a protein-rich drink, can be best, whether it's a ready-to-drink or a smoothie that you're making. Liquids they can serve, number one, as hydration, number two, as electrolytes, but then they can also help to give you that pre-workout fuel source. And the liquids can be a lot easier to digest than food. And I cannot emphasize hydration enough, period, regardless of the type of exercise or duration of exercise. Now, if it's just a really light, not strenuous workout, then just plain water is fine. But if you're going to be sweating a lot, even if it's a relatively light or moderate workout, but you're going to be outside in the heat and you're losing loads of sweat, or especially if it's an intense workout and you're losing loads of sweat, then not only do we need those fluids, but we also need electrolytes as well. And when we look at electrolytes, of course, that's sodium, potassium, calcium. But the main one that we're losing through sweat, of course, is sodium. And that's why our sweat gets that gritty saltiness on our skin. And it's truly just salt coming out. We need to replace it. And so what I don't love is sugary sports drinks for most of us. Most traditional sports drinks not only have sugar of some sort, whether it's high fructose corn syrup or cane sugar, they also have all types of different food dyes in them. So my preference is to get our carbs from other sources besides just sugary, pure sugar sports drinks. And some sugar sports drinks is fine. And there are natural versions of it that do not have the artificial colors and stuff like that. But for most people, the average person just doesn't need loads of sugary sports drink. Again, even if you're running a 10K, those electrolytes are what really matter, but we might not need the sugars, especially if we've had wise pre-workout fuel sources and that exercise is going to be lasting about an hour. We're fine. We don't typically need to add the extra sugars in during. So for sports drinks, I have two favorites. For a ready to drink bottled sports drink that you can find at just a typical regular grocery store, Body Armor Light. If you haven't tried it, try it. And you can find it at Walmart, regular grocery stores. There's a higher sugar Body Armor, but the Body Armor Light I like because it has no artificial food dyes, no artificial sweeteners or anything like that, but it's still low sugar. The other that is really my top favorite is Noon. And this is little tablets. They're kind of like Alka-Seltzer looking tablets, and they're in a little tube, and you put these tablets into your water bottle, and they are really high in electrolytes, very low in sugars, and again, nothing artificial. So one is if you're going to have a water bottle or a way that you can just refill your bottle, add these tablets into it. You've got your sports drink. It's also just they're really easy, portable to carry with you anywhere. Or if you prefer a pre-made sports drink out of the bottle, then that Body Armor Light. So when to eat, you've got to make sure you've got that timing right to where you're not eating too much, too close to your workouts. The how much is also going to vary a lot by your individual appetite, as well as your size, your body size, and your performance goals. If your primary goal is weight loss, then adding a specific pre and post workout fueling may not even be necessary, depending on how intense that workout is. What you're eating throughout the rest of your day may be sufficient.
When you say how intense, like in terms of minutes, like how long would it be to where even if you're trying to lose weight, you really need to get a pre and post?
So the ones where we say we really got to get something in you is when you're starting to be more than 60 to 90 minutes.
Okay.
So if that workout is going to be a 30-minute window, you probably don't need to eat before, especially if you're eating frequently through your day, you're kind of on your normal routine, and that workout falls somewhere in the middle of your day that you've likely had a meal within 2 hours or a snack within the past hour. It's probably going to be sufficient. We don't have to purposely add a whole other pre-workout fuel source before a 30-minute, light workout. If it's really intense though, and you feel weak and shaky and after, and you feel like you need something, well, by all means, let's put something in before. But that 60 minutes or longer, 60 to 90 minutes or longer is where we start to say, okay, our bodies typically don't have the carbs stored. We don't have the fuel source to keep us going past that. So if it's going to be 60, 90 minutes or longer, those endurance workouts, we want to try our best to have something pre-workout. And then again, post-workout to help recovery. So if it's going to just be a light workout and you want something to take the edge off of hunger, let's just say whatever it might be, it's, a lighter Pilates or a yoga class or something that's just maybe not such an intense workout session. Just something to take the edge off your hunger is all we'll need. And it could be something that's just protein rich. It could be a handful of nuts. It could be a hard-boiled egg. It could be a piece of fruit with a protein or Greek yogurt like we talked about. It could just be something light to take the edge off. And I would say the most important thing in that case is that it digests well. You feel comfortable with it. You don't feel like it's kind of like sitting up still, like, that feeling that it's like it might be sick during that workout. It's less important to me what it is more than that you like it and that it's digesting well with you during that workout. The longer workouts, so if we start to look at a 10K or longer, the pre-workout, I look to have a blend of protein and fat here. And there's just so many things this could be. A smoothie is a lot of people's go-to because you can do a protein smoothie with a milk or a milk alternative, add fresh fruit to it or banana. And you've got a really fast blend of protein, carbs, fast digestion. You could also do a sandwich, a whole grain bread with whatever type of lean protein or nut butter, or even a grilled cheese sandwich. That's going to be sufficient for, giving you that blend of protein and carb. It could be a whole grain bagel with cheese or nut butter or an egg, or if you're an avocado toast person, plop an egg on it, and that could be part of it. And then, of course, if you're going longer, much longer than the 60 or 90 minutes, we're going to need to start looking at how you're fueling during that workout as well. But again, the biggest thing on that pre-workout, the purpose when it's those longer workouts is we do have that limited reserve of carbohydrates to fuel our muscles. So we want to have protein to help minimize muscle breakdown during our workouts. And some of that is also going to serve as a fuel source along with the carbs there. So that would be kind of my recommendation there. And then post-workout, making sure we have electrolytes and making sure we have carbs, making sure we have protein. So all those things that we said before could actually serve for after. A smoothie or protein shake can be super refreshing, but all those other things that we mentioned also give us all of those things: protein, carb, and electrolyte.
I've always, seen, I've seen some advertisements on it. They have one with Sloane Stevens on TV where they talk about chocolate and milk for a post-workout. Why is that always talked about?
It's the ratio. It's the carb to protein ratio. It's 4 parts carb to 1 part protein, a 4-to-1 ratio there. And so chocolate milk has that. And so chocolate milk is kind of put out there as the ideal post-workout recovery. It's cheap. Most people really love it. And it's not only does it have that ratio of protein and carb that we like, but it's also really high in electrolytes, which you don't really think about milk as being high in electrolytes, but it is. So you can absolutely get that. But if you didn't want all just the pure sugar, because chocolate milk, unfortunately, is added sugar. So It's just teaspoons and teaspoons and teaspoons of sugar added. So my preference for most people is to try to at least get some other benefit from all that sugar. So that's why I like a smoothie instead, because now you can do your milk or milk alternative. You can add a banana, whatever kind of berries, whatever you would want.
Instead of just the added sugars.
Exactly. And so you're still getting those carbs and you're getting that ratio of carb to protein, but we're going to let even more nutrients with that.
Okay. Well, thanks to Haley. And the second part of that question was actually from the Stride Shop on Instagram. And I think this is our last question, and it comes from Alvarez. And Alvarez says, I would like to know more about controlling insulin levels as discussed in Dr. Jason Fung's book, The Obesity Code.
All right, so Jason Fung he's a physician. He's written a lot about intermittent fasting. He's a great source of information for this. So I highly recommend his books on intermittent fasting, also The Obesity Code, to kind of just get an idea there's so much that could be an entire podcast on its own, but here's a super simple overview when we're talking about insulin and why it matters about controlling insulin levels and why this is something that he emphasizes. So simply put, when we eat, our insulin levels go up and our body's cells are using the food's energy. Energy that we don't need right away is stored as glycogen. And glycogen is that's the term for basically carbohydrate stores in our muscles and our liver. Later, as our glucose levels start to drop, then our body pulls on those glycogen reserves from our muscles and liver to use as energy. And then the process kind of repeats until we eat again and the whole process starts over. So part of the deal with insulin is that when insulin levels are up and insulin levels are continually up, our body's insulin is a fat storage hormone. And so when insulin levels are high and continually circulating, meaning we're eating a lot of white processed carbs all day, this we see happen, of course, with insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. But when insulin levels are high, as I mentioned, that's called a fat storage hormone. It's essentially, think of it as kind of funneling fats into the cells. Our bodies are not truly able to burn stored body fat as an energy source as effectively when those insulin levels are constantly running high. So what he recommends to help maintain these insulin levels, first incorporate small periods of intermittent fasting. This can be just a 12-hour fast daily, which sounds like, wow, that's a lot. But all it would mean is don't eat past 8 p.m. and don't eat again until 8 a.m. There's your 12-hour fast daily. You can extend it to 14 hours or 16, but that intermittent fasting is, step one in helping to manage these insulin levels, especially leaving a 3-hour window, 2-hour window after dinner before bedtime, and then continuing that into that fasting time. That's, the first kind of key recommendation he has. And the second is what we've been talking about this whole time, choosing whole, unprocessed foods, these foods that really don't trigger much of an insulin response. So fats, and again, my preference here is plant-based fats, proteins, vegetables, legumes, especially whether it's like lentils, nuts and seeds, and then also some fruits, especially fiber-rich fruits, apples, berries, stuff like that. So, it's a very science-based, science-heavy book, but for those who love that and love understanding the why, it really does help to support a lot of the information that we're kind of talking about anyway, of these are just good things to put in our body and to be mindful. Now, is intermittent fasting for everyone? No. We've done an entire podcast on that as well. You can scroll through and, scroll through the library of the podcast, Fueled podcast, and see and find that. It's not for everybody, but it can be really effective for a lot of people. And so take a listen to that to hear more. But definitely, I'm much more open to that as being a nice fit for someone than even maybe, 5 years ago.
I know whenever you've talked about intermittent fasting, you always talk about brain health. So why does intermittent fasting kind of get categorized over into brain health and Alzheimer's and things like that?
Yeah. So the first, I think it was maybe 5 years ago or something like that, I was doing an article on Alzheimer's prevention, and I found, that over and over that intermittent fasting, like that 12-hour fast we were saying, is associated with a reduction in the plaques that form in the brain that are linked to linked to Alzheimer's. And so the intermittent fasting, that was when I first thought, wow, maybe there's something more to this, because if there's so much science on brain health for this and there's potential physical benefit from it. And I think even, 5 years ago, it was still a relatively new concept. A lot of people, myself included, we were like, I don't know, that seems kind of extreme. But then once you start to look at the science, and it isn't just the physical benefits that someone can experience with intermittent fasting. And again, that fasting window doesn't have to be insane. We're talking 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I mean, it's not extreme there. To be able to have, though, brain health benefits, body benefits, blood pressure, cholesterol, and these factors continually are shown to improve with intermittent fasting. So I do think it can be a really good option for people. I don't think it's for everyone, but if someone does want to choose it, and there's no health reasons of why we shouldn't, I definitely am in support of it.
And so when we're talking about the brain health or the benefits you get from it, why does controlling of insulin, why is that linked to helping, like physically, like in layman's terms? What's it doing in the brain?
Well, the formation, minimized formation of these plaques it's plaques found in the brain, that these plaques are associated with an increase in Alzheimer's. Okay. And intermittent fasting shows less of this plaque formation in the brain. Intermittent fasting also is key for controlling inflammation. And we do know that inflammation is linked to a host of things, from cancer to heart disease to Alzheimer's and dementia. So every little bit that we can do to nudge down the inflammatory response in our body even better, and keeping our insulin levels in check, can help us do that as well. All right. Well, thank you for joining me as my co-host in this week's episode.
I think it shows me that you have to be careful about what your recommendations are, and having someone read you the questions, I guess, was a good recommendation. I just didn't realize that I would be doing it.
It's what do they say? If you volunteer, offering to volunteer is offering to help.
Something like that.
Or offering a suggestion is offering to volunteer. Anyway, yes. I'm butchering it, but you did both, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome. And I'll include the links that we talked about in the show notes of this episode, and let me know what you think as you incorporate any of these strategies and that we talked about into your life. Tell me about it. If you've got questions, send them my way through social or email, or just stop us when you see us, and we'll include it in our next round of Your Questions Answered. And I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. And if you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of fueled wellness and nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.